Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. Each story starts with confidence and ends in chaos. As always, viewer discretion is advised. On February 2nd, 2026, Aaron Doyle lifted the grate in a Somerset field and climbed down into SWILDON'S Hole, the longest cave on the Mendip Hills. 9 kilometers of stream-cut passage folded under one farm. Its squeezes are polished glass smooth by floodwater. They give nothing back. She was caving with 2 clubmates. Down the wet way to Sump 1, back up the dry, high-level route, out by dark. Aaron was 31 years old, a physiotherapist from Wells who spent every weekend underground and had logged 300 trips in 9 years, the smallest of her club, and the one they sent first into anything tight. Her habit was the breath. At every squeeze she stopped, emptied her lungs fully, and only then moved, because a chest full of air, she told her students, is a size larger than you think you are. The trip was a classic, 3 hours down and 3 hours home. What she didn't know, the winter water had been refitting one gauge on the dry route all season. Here is what you need to understand about Mendip's tight places. They are not doorways, they are gauges. Each one passes a certain size of caver at a certain angle, and the cave never tells you when high water has moved the needle. A rift that passed you in autumn can hold a centimeter less by spring, and a centimeter, in a gauge, is the difference between through and held fast on a rope of stone. The descent ran like a Sunday walk. Boots splashing the streamway, chalk-white water hissing over the double pots, 3 lamps swinging through chambers the club had known for 40 years, laughter bouncing back off wet rock. They touched Sump 1 on schedule and turned up the dry route for home. What they didn't know, the flood-polished squeeze ahead, the one every Mendip caver calls friendly, had shed a plate of rock in the winter and narrowed by 2 knuckles. Halfway through the squeeze, that is when the cave failed her. Because the profile her body knew by heart was no longer the profile of the rock, and the rift took her chest and hips together and stopped her like a bolt seating home. Forward gained nothing, backward gained less. What she knew, cheek against the stone. Fighting a squeeze swells you. Muscle, breath, panic, all of it makes you bigger. And that habit, empty the lungs, then move, was about to be the entire difference. Panic arrived on schedule. The rock held her chest. Her arms were pinned. She was stuck fast. The cave was fitting her tighter with every breath. Because this is the arithmetic of a squeeze. A panicked breather fights the rock 20 times a minute and loses every round. The cold of wet limestone takes a wedged body toward hypothermia inside 2 hours, and the nearest passage wide enough for a rescue party stood 60 minutes behind them, on the far side of her. 1 caver lay seated in the gauge of the hill. 2 clubmates could touch her boots and nothing else. And the only tool that fit into the squeeze with her was air. Watch a club solve a problem older than caving itself. First, voices low and level, hands on her boots, not pulling, just there, while she wound her breathing down from panic to purpose. Second, the drill. Empty the lungs to the last of it. Turn the shoulders to the angle the rock wanted. Move on the emptiness, an inch at a time, before the body demands its next breath. Put yourself in that rift for 1 minute of it. Stone pressed your chest and back at once. Your own heartbeat came back at you off the rock, and every instinct you own screamed to inhale, while the only way out was empty. She came through on the 4th cycle. Exhale, turn, inch, rest. Her oversuit leaving a stripe of navy on the stone like a tide mark. Her clubmates fed her chocolate in the chamber beyond, while the shakes ran their course. And then the 3 of them took the long, wide way home, giving the gauge its silence. They lifted the grate into a Somerset dusk 9 hours after leaving it. 3 headlamps in a wet green field, and stood there breathing for a while on purpose, slow and deep, the way you do when panic has finally lost the vote. All three came home on one emptied breath, and the club's report regraded the route. The squeeze is posted at its new winter size. First-timers now pass it with 10 meters of belay line rigged from the far side, and every Mendip novice learns the exhale drill in a concrete pipe on the surface before they ever meet the real thing. The longest cave on Mendip still runs its stream under the PRIDDY fields, still polishing its gauges a flood at a time. Aaron still goes first into the tight stuff, 300 trips on, and the report hangs in the club hut over the training pipe. A chest full of air is a size larger than you think you are, she tells her students. The hill remeasured her by 2 knuckles. The breath is what fit. On April 18th, 2026, Stavros Makris stepped to the lip of Provatina, the great shaft of the Astraka plateau. 400 meters of free air once ranked the second deepest sheer drop on Earth. Shepherds found it by the sound. A stone dropped from the lip falls silent for 11 seconds. He was descending with one partner on ropes rigged the day before by an advance team, down the Great Wall to the snow cone, 2 hours of survey, and the long climb out. Stavros was 39 years old, a ferry mechanic from Ioannina who had logged 400 descents in 17 years of vertical caving, the one his club called when the drop was measured in football pitches. His habit was the knot. He tied a fist-sized stopper into the end of every rope he rigged, because the bottom of a rope in the dark, he told his son, should be a wall, not a window. The plan was simple and fast. His partner first, then him. What he didn't know, the advance team had rigged in a storm, in a hurry, and the second rope's tail hung 2 meters short of the ledge, bare. Here is what you need to understand about Provatina. The shaft descends in 2 great steps, and the changeover ledge between them is a shelf of stone in a darkness the daylight never reaches. A descender does not know where a rope ends. It carries you at the same easy hiss through the last meter as the first, and past it, if nothing in the rope says stop. The first pitch ran like ritual, carabiners clicking home at the lip, rope hissing through the rack, the entrance sky shrinking to a blue coin, jackdaws clattering off the walls, the snow cone glowing far below like a lamp under cloth. Nothing failed on his own rope, because his own rope carried his own knot, tied fat at the tail the way it always was. His partner reached the changeover ledge and called off rope, voice tiny in the dark. What they didn't know, the call had come from a stance 2 meters higher than the rigging plan promised, because the storm rig had seated the anchors high. 40 meters above the ledge, that is when the rig failed him, because the rope in his descender was running out in the dark with nothing at its end to say so. No wall, only window. His lamp found the bare tail below his hand at the worst possible distance, 1 body length. What he knew, in the half-second the sight bought him, a stopper knot was not there. His brake hand was the only wall left. And that habit, the fist of rope he tied at every tail he ever rigged, belonged to a rope another team had rigged in the rain. Panic and physics arrived in the same instant. The rig had failed. The tail whipped free. His hand closed on air. The ledge took him at speed. Because this is the arithmetic of a rope's end. 2 meters of free fall arrives in under 1 second. A gloved brake hand bleeds off perhaps half the speed. And a stone shelf does not negotiate with what remains. One caver lay broken on the changeover ledge. One partner knelt over him with a first aid pouch, and 400 meters of shaft stood between them and the sky. Watch a partner do everything the mountain allows. First, the assessment by lamplight, airway, bleeding, the wrong angle of a hip, and the sleeping bag from the survey kit tucked close, because shock kills on cold stone faster than injuries do, and the ledge held its cold like a cellar. Second, the climb. 400 meters alone, Prusik squeaking on wet rope, to a radio that lived in a tent on the plateau. 1 hour and 10 minutes of climbing carrying the only working voice. Put yourself on that ledge for 1 minute of it. A sleeping bag tucked around you by shaking hands. your partner's lamp rising away until it is a star, then nothing. And the dark of Provatina with you alone in it, breathing wet, counting. The Greek cave rescue flew at first light and rigged the shaft by noon, stretcher and barrel knots and a doctor on the wall. They reached the changeover ledge 22 hours after the fall and found the sleeping bag zipped, the survey notes tucked inside it, and Stavros beyond the reach of any list of equipment. Stavros Makris died of his injuries in the night, alone on the ledge, somewhere in the 10th hour. The recovery took the team 2 days, and the shaft gave every meter of it grudgingly. The inquiry ruled the death a rigging failure met by a faultless partner response, and the Federation changed its law that season. Every rope tail in the country now carries a stopper knot tied and photographed at the anchor, and no caver descends a rope another team rigged without touching its end first. Provatina still opens its silent mouth on the Astraka plateau, still 400 meters of falling dark, still 11 seconds by dropped stone. Clubs still come each summer, their rope tails knotted fat, and the inquest's photographs bound into the rigging guide, and the Federation's circular carries his rule word for word. The bottom of a rope should be a wall, not a window, Stavros told his son. 2 meters of window took him. Tie the wall, then photograph it. On July 20th, 2026, János Fekete sank below the surface of a desert lake at the bottom of a collapse in the Nullarbor Plain and started into Cocklebiddy, the flooded cave where the longest cave dives on Earth were swum. 6 kilometers of drowned tunnel, wide enough to fly a plane through. Divers do not swim it, they ride. He was diving with one partner, scooters to the first rock pile at 4 kilometers on Trimix lean mixes, a survey fix, and the long ride home on the same battery. János was 34 years old, a paramedic from Perth who had logged 500 cave dives across 11 years. The one long-range teams gave the navigation because he treated distance itself as the hazard. His habit was the thirds of the machine. Battery, like gas, split into thirds, one out, one home, one untouchable. Because a scooter, he told his students, is borrowed distance, and the cave collects on loans. The plan was long but clean. 40 minutes riding out, a fix at the rock pile, 40 minutes home. What he didn't know, his battery's third marks had been made in warm water, and the cave ran 6 degrees colder than the test tank. Here is what you need to understand about Cocklebiddy. Its size is the danger. The tunnel is so wide the walls leave your lights, and the distances are so long that swimming home is a different dive from riding home. Twice the time, twice the gas. Every plan in this cave balances on the machines. Cold eats batteries quietly, from the inside, and the gauge lies right up until it doesn't. The ride out ran like flight, motors humming low, regulators hissing slow behind the props, twin cones of light on a tunnel of pale stone, the guideline clicking past its markers kilometre after kilometre. Nothing failed on the way out, because cold spends batteries in silence, and the gauges kept smiling. They fixed the survey point at the rock pile on schedule, batteries reading comfortable. What they didn't know, the cold had already spent the reserve the gauges still promised. 2 kilometers into the ride home, that is when the machine failed him, because the cold-starved cells fell off their cliff all at once. The motor sagged, surged, and went silent in his hands. His partner's light was a diminishing star far up the tunnel. What he knew, hanging in open black water with a dead scooter, 2 kilometers of cave lay ahead. His gas was planned for riding, and swimming it would double the time the plan had paid for. And that habit, the untouchable third, was about to be spent. Panic knocked once and was refused entry. The scooter was dead. His partner was gone. He was swimming now. The gas clock doubled. Because this is the arithmetic of borrowed distance. The swim home would take 50 minutes. His remaining gas held 40 minutes at working effort. And the reserve third, the untouchable, held 20 minutes more if he made his breathing believe it was a quiet afternoon. One diver swam a tunnel built for machines. One dead scooter hung clipped beneath him like an anchor he refused to drop. And the exit lake lay 2 kilometres of black water away. Watch a paramedic treat himself as the patient. First, slow everything. Kick rate, heart, thoughts. Long glides on the line, gas sipped. The dead machine trimmed flat so it cost him nothing but its weight. Second, the maths. Rerun every 100 metres on the guideline markers. Distance against pressure. The untouchable third opened early and on purpose. Spent like a man counting coins onto a table. Put yourself on that line for 1 minute of it. The tunnel ran wider than your lights could reach. You checked the gauge by touch to spare the lamp. And 2 numbers fell toward each other. Meters left, bar left, deciding whether they crossed before you did. His partner's light came back for him at the half-kilometre mark. The man had turned the moment the second cone vanished from his mirror check, towing spare gas. Janos took the fresh cylinder with hands that had stopped feeling the cold, and the two of them rowed and swam the last of the tunnel together, surfacing into the desert night with 19 bar between them. They lay on the collapse slope under the Nullarbor stars for a long time, gear still on, saying nothing worth recording. The day's panic finally allowed to shake itself out through their hands. Both divers survived on discipline and 19 bar, and the expedition's report rewrote the machine rules. Batteries are now derated 30% for cave temperature and tested cold. Scooters ride in pairs with a tow bridle rigged, and no diver passes the 2-kilometre marker outbound with less than double swim-home gas. Cocklebiddy still lies under the Nullarbor, still wide enough to swallow every light brought into it. Still the cave where the longest dives on Earth were swum. Long-range teams still stage there every winter, their batteries derated cold, his rule stenciled inside every scooter case. A scooter is borrowed distance, Janos tells his students, and the cave collects on loans. He paid his back at 50 minutes for 2 kilometers. Carry the interest in gas.